When you spend nearly a decade quietly holding a company together from the shadow of your desk, you start to believe that competence is its own armor. I learned the hard way that corporate survival has nothing to do with efficiency and everything to do with fragile executive egos. For 9 years, I maintained every critical system, audited every vendor agreement, and ensured our regulatory compliance remained pristine. Yet, all it took to dismantle that stability was one self-absorbed heir marching into the boardroom with a title he never earned. My name is Brenda, and as the Senior Vice President of Global Operations, I operated on a simple rule of absolute precision. I rarely raised my voice, I ignored executive vanity, and I solved catastrophic supply chain bottlenecks before anyone else even realized they existed. During my tenure, I guided the company through 3 leadership transitions and 2 massive corporate restructurings without a single compliance violation. Meanwhile, the chief executive brought in his son, Drake, fresh off an expensive retreat, branding him our new chief strategy officer despite zero operational knowledge. Drake was the kind of executive who mistook loud buzzwords for leadership and viewed actual documentation as a legacy burden. He spent his first week attempting to gamify employee performance metrics and scheduling mandatory sync meetings during Friday evening rush hour. While I was managing tight investor deadlines, Drake was busy replacing actual workflow protocols with stock photos of extreme sports and endless slides of corporate jargon. I consistently buffered his mistakes, rewriting his scattered reports before board reviews simply to protect the organization from absolute chaos. The breaking point arrived during a high-stakes, multi-million-dollar compliance review with our largest defense partner. Right in the middle of calibrating a critical milestone agreement, my phone lit up with repeated calls from Drake. I temporarily excused myself from the client meeting, expecting an emergency, only for him to demand that I abandon the review immediately to join an impromptu session about modifying our digital slide deck aesthetics. When I calmly explained that the audit took priority over visual design, he lost his temper completely. In a fit of unearned authority, Drake screamed over the phone that he was the owner's son and declared me instantly terminated. He expected me to beg, panic, or plead for my career, but I simply maintained my composure. I ended the call without arguing, rejoined the defense client, and completed the milestone sign-off with absolute professionalism. Once the meeting wrapped, I retrieved a single critical governance document from my archives, forwarded it to my personal email, collected my belongings, and walked out without making a scene. The entire executive suite assumed I would fade away quietly while Drake celebrated removing what he called operational friction. What they failed to grasp was that corporate authority requires meticulous administrative execution, not just loud declarations. For 3 full days, no one from human resources or legal even attempted to send formal exit documentation or revoke my credentials. Drake wanted the thrill of firing a senior executive without undergoing the tedious legal process required to actually remove me from our official regulatory filings. As the week progressed, the lack of operational leadership began tearing the company apart from the inside. Junior analysts posted urgent messages regarding missing vendor authorization logs, while supplier invoices were systematically rejected due to improper approvals. Drake attempted to reassure investors through social media posts about modernizing our hierarchy, completely unaware that our critical funding depended on a specific clause. Every quarterly capital release required formal verification from the designated operational officer filed under contract, and that designated officer was still me. By Monday morning, internal systems were actively failing and client access portals were crashing due to botched permission updates. Legal received urgent calls from European partner groups questioning missing documentation, while Drake casually dismissed the growing chaos as part of an agile transformation. He even scribbled derogatory remarks about legacy bottlenecks on the central conference room board, completely ignoring the fact that his father's company was rapidly drifting toward total financial stagnation without a qualified signatory. When the executive team finally realized they could not submit the required milestone packet without my verified signature, panic swept through the upper floors. Legal dispatched an overly polite, backdated documentation request to my personal inbox, hoping I would quietly affirm past oversight without asking questions. I simply reviewed the email, marked it unread, and placed it into a personal file labeled 0 response. I had no intention of taking legal liability for an executive team that viewed operational governance as optional paperwork. The primary investment group soon initiated a direct inquiry with the chief executive, demanding to know why the quarterly verification packet was late. Drake foolishly stepped in to assure them that operations were performing better than ever, prompting the lead investor to order an immediate review of Section 7 in our agreement. That specific governing clause explicitly stated that any change in operational oversight required board approval and investor notification 10 days prior to milestone releases, a process Drake had completely ignored. Because they had failed to formally process my termination or file a qualified successor, the entire $40 million funding disbursement was immediately frozen. The board called an emergency early morning meeting to address the governance breach, inviting external legal counsel to audit the oversight logs. Drake entered the room attempting to wave away the compliance failure as minor paperwork, only to be met with total silence as the lead investor read the strict operational terms directly from the binding contract. With capital releases officially halted, partner organizations began taking immediate protective action against the company. A major component manufacturer suspended all upcoming shipments, while third-party logistics partners froze field service support due to unverified compliance signatures. Inside the building, internal escalation tickets piled up by the thousands, while department heads frantically searched for signed integration templates that had only ever lived in my structured archives. Drake's authority dissolved almost instantly, leading to his silent removal from the corporate directory. Following the total collapse of their operational structure, the lead investment firm bypassed company leadership entirely and contacted me directly. They offered an exclusive consulting engagement with complete operational control and flexible terms, recognizing that no one else understood the underlying infrastructure. I let the invitation sit for several days while the board conducted an internal investigation into the gross mismanagement and unauthorized actions that had paralyzed their business operations. 2 weeks later, I stepped into a newly established corporate office to lead the complete restructuring of the company's operational framework. The investment board granted full authority to rebuild the governance model without interference from unearned executive influence. I placed a framed transcript of Drake's final aggressive phone call directly behind my new desk, serving as a permanent reminder that true authority is built on quiet competence, precise execution, and structural integrity.